Welcome to the webinar on community shares, which has been hosted by Highlands and Islands Enterprise. My name is Lindsay Chalmers from Community Land Scotland. I'll be chairing the webinar today. First up, you're going to hear Kelly McIntyre of Community Shares Scotland, who will be giving an overview of how you could use community shares to raise investment. Lisa McLean of Galton Estate Trust on Lewis, which used community shares to raise investment for its wind turbines, will then be talking about their experience of using community shares in practice. You can see some instructions about how to ask questions. It would be really good if you could keep your questions to the end. We've left plenty of time at the end of the webinar for you to ask any burning questions you have. You can ask questions by either typing questions in the question box and one of us will read them out. Or if you would like to ask a question verbally, you can click on the raise hand button and we'll unmute you and you can ask the question. So now I'm going to hand over to Kelly McIntyre, who's the Programme Manager of Community Shares Scotland, and she'll take you through her presentation.
Hello, and thank you very much for joining in on this webinar. Now, I'm Kelly and this is Marvin.
Hello.
And we're the Community Shares Scotland team, and this is a program that's been, it's now its second year out of a 3-year contract, and we are here as a support and advice service to help groups to navigate the world of community shares and how they may or may not be applicable to them and what we can do to support them throughout the process. Very quickly, we're just going to show you an animation to give you a sense of sort of just generally what community shares are that's much more palatable than, say, my voice. So if we can just 2 seconds. There you go.
Once upon a time, there was a community that didn't want the last pub where they lived to close down. They had great ideas about how it could be much more than a pub, but they needed money to make their dreams come true. The banks didn't think the community could make it work, and the local council didn't have any money to spare. But there was a group of people who did believe in them. Themselves. If they all pulled together, they could pool their money, from the well-off to the not-so-well-off. More than 200 enterprises in the UK have raised finance this way, from football clubs to piers, wind farms and local transport. What links them all is they respond to a need a community wants to see fulfilled. More than 40,000 people have already invested this way, often from as little as £50, but have raised amounts from £20,000 to more than £1.5 million. This money was raised through people buying shares. But these weren't ordinary shares. They were community shares. Community shares don't work like normal shares, where you might be allowed to sell your shares to someone else. And your investment isn't a donation made in the hope that things will work out. At the heart of a community share issue is a business plan, an offer document that shows how the money being raised will enable good things to happen. Your money will be backing something that has a real chance of success as a viable business. And when a community backs an idea by investing, it makes it more likely that other people will too. And the more successful the enterprise is, the more likely it is that people will get their money back. You might even get interest on your shares and a tax break on your investment. Regardless of how much you invest, you all have one vote. That means you and the other investors control the enterprise. And if you think it's being run badly, you can do something about it. Sharing ownership with others means you share the risk and the benefits. We're helping enterprises, supporters and advisors to use community shares. And communities can even run their share offer directly through our Microgenius platform. So if your community believes in something, then investing in community shares can make it happen.
So I'll just take us back to the slides. So this is Morgan here. I'm the Programme Officer for Community Shares Scotland. I'm just going to do maybe 2 slides and then hand back to Kelly. So I'm just going to talk you through what community shares are just on a basic level, and then go into a little bit more detail, picking up on some of what you just heard in the animation about the specific qualities and benefits of community shares. And then Kelly will talk you through a little bit more of the nitty-gritty stuff about the best legal form and the kind of 4 key pillars of community shares. and then we'll finish up with just what support is available from us, and then we've got some Q&A at the end as well. So yeah, just to pick up on the animation and to give you a little bit more information about what community shares are. So as I hope you could tell from the animation, this is essentially about raising finance. This is a funding mechanism. And it's about raising finance for sustainable community enterprises. And the reason I've put that in bold on the first slide is those are the kind of key first step things that you have to consider. So this has to be money for a community, and that community traditionally is geographical, but we're seeing more and more communities of interest approach us, and we will give you some examples of those later if needs be. The second thing is this idea of enterprise, and for reasons that will become clearer as we go along, this has to be money that's for a viable business. So there has to be a viable business proposition at the heart of what you're raising finance for. How it works is, and I'm sure you picked this up from the animation, is that shareholders are invited to invest in these local enterprises, and the enterprises are providing goods and services that meet some kind of local needs. Shareholders can be anyone. It can be mainly individuals, but it can also be organisations. Typically, the majority of shareholders come from the community itself, but it doesn't have to be. They can also come from outside the community, and that can be international as well. And I think it's worth pointing out that for these shareholders, this is not about making any kind of financial profit. Sometimes that can be a small part of it, but this is about people who want to get involved and support a cause that they really care about, and something that's going to have a real social impact within their community. So just to move on to the specific qualities and benefits of community shares. So these are member-based. So Kelly will talk a little bit more about this in the next slide, but essentially these are, if the shareholders invest in community shares, they become members of the organisation. So if growth in membership is something that is attractive, and for a lot of the communities we work with it is, then this is a really, really excellent way to grow your community engagement. On top of that, we talk about this as being incredibly democratic. And what we mean by that is that regardless of how much people invest, so say someone puts in £10 or someone puts in £10,000, everybody gets one equal say in how the enterprise is run. So everyone is allowed to come along to the AGM, have one vote, and everybody has the right to stand to be a member of the management committee if that's what they want to do, regardless of how much they've invested. Just to pick up again on this idea of social return on investment before financial return. So we get asked this again and again, so is this a way for people to make money? And occasionally there is interest offered, and that's something that we can talk about in the Q&A if you like, but this is essentially about social return on investment. So this is about people putting their money into something that they care about, and they're going to get something back in return. So whether it's access to a service that might have been lost, or some opportunity to volunteer or be an activist or be a board member. So this is first and foremost about a social return on investment. To talk a little bit about the kind of nitty-gritty stuff, so we talk about this as non-transferable and withdrawable. And what we mean by that is you can't sell your shares on to anybody else. So you can't buy a share for £10 and then sell it on to your neighbour for £20. So they will always remain the price that you bought them for. They're never going to go up in value. And they're withdrawable in that you have to give your shareholders the option to withdraw their shares at some point in the future. And this goes back to the idea of why it has to be a sustainable business. So there has to be that liquidity built into your business plan, that if people come back to you and say, I would like to take my shares out, then you need to give them consideration and the option to do that. There's things that you can do and write into your rules to make sure that not too many people take their money out at once, and also that the money can potentially be held in for, typically it's about 3 to 5 years without anyone being able to withdraw. And again, we can talk a wee bit more about that if anyone is interested. Minimal regulation. So outside of the usual kind of annual returns that you would have to submit to the Financial Conduct Authority, there's very limited and little reporting and regulation. What that means is that comes with responsibility for quite stringent self-regulation. So, for example, in all of your business plan documents and your share offer documents and your marketing, you have to be incredibly clear that this is a risk, people can lose their money, and that no one should invest more than they can afford to lose. So just to quickly go through some of the benefits. So we talk about this as being long-term patient capital, which is essentially just a fancy way of saying that this is your money. And once it's in, as long as you're sticking to your aims and objectives that your members have signed up for, it's essentially yours to do what you want with it, when you want with it. So I guess comparing to loans, there's no repayment schedule. And comparing to grants, there's no reporting necessarily. There's not a long list of KPIs that you have to fulfill. It's essentially your money that can sometimes sit there for a while before you decide what you want to do with it. What we do tend to see, though, is that if you do community shares and you manage to get your community behind you and get them putting their money where their mouth is and investing, you will see that there is much more likely that you will get further funding and lever in grant funding and loans. So it kind of builds that mutual confidence. And we tend to see that community shares come often in a funding package. So they might be, community shares might be a small element, but they're a very, very essential lever for building that mutual confidence and getting other forms of funding in. And then finally, just to reiterate this idea of community governance and operation, this is what it's all about. This is about building enterprises that are truly owned by the community and truly run by the community. And we tend to see that if people become a shareholder, so if they invest and become a community shareholder, then they're much, much more likely to engage in other ways in the community and in the enterprise. So be it actually use the service or be a board member or volunteer, it truly creates that idea of great community operation and great community ownership. So yeah, I hope that was quick enough. I'm not sure about time, but I'll just hand over to Kelly for the next couple of slides.
Thank you. So now, as Lauren pointed out, legal form is very important, and it's not just about legal form, but also the governance that sits behind it. Now, communities that wish to raise capital through a share offer need to ensure that they have the appropriate legal form and the corresponding governance structures that go with it. And the current legal forms that one can issue community shares under are, well, there's two options ever since the 2014 Act. The first being a bona fide cooperative society. If anyone's aware of community shares in the longer term, they might have always known them to be called bona fides. Now, these are just your basic co-ops, whereas about the member and the enterprise and the relation between the two. So this is where it is a bit more about truly the membership and not the wider community. Although in many cases you will find that cooperative societies are very much inclined towards the wider community, so this is not to say that they're all very self-focused and centralized, but it means that they can be, so therefore it is not one of the more preferred options by funders and lenders, and particularly the Scottish Government. When we get in, we can definitely cover this in Q&As, but legislative frameworks where now by community benefit societies, which were previously known and are still often referred to as BENCOMs, they may now be referred to as CBSs, but what they are is basically all the same ethos and building as a cooperative, but it's also about something wider than just the membership and the enterprise benefiting from one another. It is about there has to be something wider for the community in terms of benefit. And that has to be proven when lodging their rules, which are the governing document. And that needs to be the driving force behind the organisation, is that whilst there may be investor members that are very, very engaged, everyone else needs to be benefiting in some way, shape, or form as well. And again, that is about how you define community, but that just needs to be very clearly laid out when you go to do your rules. And as we keep saying, the rules, they are governed by the rules because you're working under society law, not regular company law, in the sense that you may be familiar with. You may also be familiar with this. However, if you're not, the rules are very much like anyone's MNRs or constitutional documents, and they're very straightforward, but they are registered with Financial Conduct Authority as opposed to, say, Companies House. And the only case in which you would be registered with something other than solely the FCA would be as if you chose to be charitable community benefit society, which is the only one that can be charitable of the two, and at which point you would need OSCAR approval as well, and they would also want your returns. And when you register with the FCA, you need to ensure that your rules are in line with what they believe society law requires. And again, that's something we can help with. And further to that, many societies choose to adopt what we call model rules. There are lots and lots of them out there, and everyone is much more tailored to a certain type of society that is trying to happen or make something happen. So again, we can guide you towards that through that process, and it's much less expensive. Model rules are, if you take them and you just fill in the gaps, you're looking at £45. If you take them and you make it up to 6 changes, you're looking at £150, and then it goes incrementally up to then. But if you make a bunch of changes, you basically rewrite them, it's £999, and all of a sudden it's pretty expensive. So, and mostly the model rules that are out there, one form or another, should fit with what you're trying to do. And we're also, as Community Share Scotland, working to get some that are very Scotland focused through the Financial Conduct Authority, and we're very close right now, and we can go through that during Q&As. Oh, sorry. So then, again, the rules will just like any other governing document, they provide advice on how the interests in the society of its members need to be met. Further to that, the rules of the society determine the scope, terms, and conditions of a share offer, because a share offer is built upon these rules in the end, because your rules cannot be contradicted by anything else. So either you want to ensure that you give yourself the greatest flexibility, or if there's something that's very important to you, say if it's geographic scope, or if it's certain aims and objectives, or certain areas in which the proceeds will be pointed towards, that needs to probably be embedded within your rules, rather than hoping that that's enough to be moving on with your share offer document. Now, we sort of think of 4 key pillars of a successful share offer, and they cannot, we line them up as if they're sequential, but actually, more often than not, you're doing them in sort of parallel. So don't freak out if you've been considering it and you've done one but not the other, or you don't see how you're ever going to do it in that order and get it done. Lots of things can be done at the same time, and there is a lot of overlap. A successful community enterprise is going to have a very strong business case, as Morgan pointed out earlier, and that's where the venture is shown to be viable, profitable, and sustainable. And communities need to develop a business plan that meets the criteria that will underpin any prospective community share offer. So again, at the point of writing rules, they might not yet know exactly what their offer is going to look like, because they might be potentially looking at other funds, other premises, things such as this. So you need to make sure that you've given yourself adequate movement to do what it is you're trying to do. And again, advisors like ourselves and other consultants that we can broker in can help with that. And they need to be specific, measurable, achievable, and realistic and timely. So, a smart business model, as many people would refer that to. I refer to as. And definitely, again, a lot of times groups are very good at doing that themselves, but that's somewhere where a group's falling short, we can certainly assist. Now, community engagement is really, utterly critical and crucial. Now, I don't think we can, in any stretch, sort of lay this one on enough, and I know many of you will be very involved in the community, so you'll think it's obvious to you. But even in groups where it would have seemed obvious, this is just a different sort of thing. In many senses, if you're doing a share offer, it's like a campaign. So you really need to really think in terms of how you're going to make a success of your share offer. And, you know, raising share capital from the local community is only going to work if you have their full support. And enterprises need to understand the scale and scope of the community that they're trying to appeal to. So if it's of interest or a purpose or geographic, it needs to fit within the remits that they require. And they also need to be looking to attract support and finally build that membership. So there needs to be a pre-campaign in some senses in this community engagement strategy. You know, if you're already an existing organization or you already have these sorts of things in place, great, you need to start to rumble that right away if this is what you're planning to do. If not, then we'll tell you to start rumbling it. And the sooner you can get people behind what it is you're trying to do and understand what you're trying to do, the better. And again, that's what we're also here for. And then governance. As I pointed out in the last slide, legal form is critical because if you want to issue community shares, you have to become either a cooperative society or bona fide cooperative or a community benefit society. Now, there are ways and means of linking those to existing organizations. We will totally cover that in Q&A. However, it's important to know that you still will require that to be in place, and it has to be a standalone organization. Whilst we can embed linkages within rules, it cannot be a subsidiary. And then it will and also needs to make sure that, you know, it covers all the sorts of conduct and managerial capacity that you would want to see in the long run, because these rules are the sort of foundation of your organization. Whether you end up doing a share offer or you end up getting all your finance from somewhere else, because particularly community benefit societies are incredibly nimble organizations and useful, and now that they are legitimized under the Community Environment Act and land reform, they are very much applicable to community right to buy and all sorts of asset transfer, things that might be of interest to groups. So with that in mind, you need to make sure that these rules allow for that, they've embedded what's required, and that you embedded the kind of conduct that you will want to see occurring within your committee or board. And that's incredibly important too. And again, that conduct, once if not embedded, is not correctly, will not engage the community. So moving on to the offer document, it really needs to be accurate. Now, you said you did a lot of hard work to get to this point, so you want to make sure people know what you're talking about. What's on offer? You know, are you offering people to invest in, you know, a wind turbine that's going to give its proceeds to the Community Development Trust for the purpose of building a community hall and then running food programs from it, or are you offering people a chance to invest in being a member owner of their own operative harbor? But that just needs to be there. It needs to be clear. It needs to be informative. And so there needs to be a really powerful narrative that helps to inform people. It has to also be in a language that people can understand, because many of these people will be first-time investors, period, let alone in community shares. So you need to be very straightforward, and that's very important. So it's about information. It's also about making it accessible. And you also want to have things like access to your business plans, your rules, and everything else that it would be a supporting document somewhere attached, either as a link, go here and find it here, or come to us and we'll make sure you get it. So it's really, therefore, important to be simple, transparent, engaging, and not overly long. as shorter and as short as it can be whilst covering requirements is the best, and as punchy and as sort of narrating to the heart of the matter is the best possible option. And there's it really forms a contract, the offer document, between the Society's board and members, and it should set out the clear terms and conditions of investment in a way that doesn't misrepresent or omit any important information, such as risk. Risk is incredibly important to note. Now, ideally, all of this will not ever be an issue because you've done a very strong business model and it comes to fruition, and no sort of acts of God, XYZ, come into play to ruin those scenarios. But you need to say that this is investment, and investment is at risk, and therefore, unless you can afford to lose it, you should not invest. And that's really important, because you don't want little Mrs. Jones going, here's my whole pension, when that's all she's got. And whilst it might feel great at the time to get that boom in numbers, it won't feel great coming on later.
So I'm just going to move on to the next slide. So you might now be thinking, okay, this all sounds great, but what support is actually available to help us do this? And the great answer is that there's a lot of support from Community Share Scotland. As Kelly mentioned at the beginning, we are fully funded by the Big Lottery Scotland and the Carnegie Trust. So everything that we do is offered free of charge to groups. We have a range of support available, so I'll just quickly talk you through what it might look like. So first and foremost, and this is a lot of what Kelly and I do on a day-to-day basis, is we can offer lots of early stage support in-house from Kelly and I, whether that's over phone or email, or we tend to come out and actually meet with groups face-to-face and do presentations to boards, for example. So that's kind of the first step for us, assessing where groups are at and what kind of further support they might need. Following on from that, and once we've run what we call a diagnostic tool with the groups, we can then offer up to 6 days of tailored consultancy support. And that is focused on the 4 key pillars that Kelly mentioned earlier. So the business planning, community engagement, governance, or the share offer document. So it's a bespoke package of support that we can offer, and it'll be very much focused on exactly what the group need. So they might already have an excellent business plan in place, and it's just a case of getting them some community engagement support to get them over that launch mark and get them a successful share offer. Another thing that we've got is a micro grant programme. So groups can apply for up to £5,000. And what this covers is additional costs outside of the consultancy support. So things such as a launch event, if you're wanting to put on an event once you're actually ready to launch your share offer. Printing and marketing costs, so designing your share offer document, printing enough high quality copies and distributing them around your community and wider. Or we've seen more and more groups needing specialist tax or legal support, and again that's something that the microgrant can cover. Obviously we have lots and lots of links to other support organisations, so sometimes groups come to us and it's a case of us signposting them off first of all to other support organisations and getting them help there before they come back to us. There's a list of those on our website, and again we can go into some detail. We essentially we are a consortium, so we have some key partners, and they are the Community Shares Unit, which is our our sister organisation down in England. We also work closely with the Plunkett Foundation, which I'm sure a lot of you will be familiar with. Their expertise is cooperative pubs and shops, and we work also with DTAS, so they're our key partner, so the Development Trust Association Scotland. So we actually sit in their office and we tap into their brain trust and their knowledge pretty much every single day. Finally, we'll give you access to numerous Scottish focus resources and tools. So there's two key tools that I would highlight. The first being the Community Shares Handbook, which is housed on our website. I think it's currently sitting up around 100 pages, but luckily it's actually an online tool as well that is searchable. So anything that you can think of that relates to community shares should be in there, and there's a great search function, but if you need help navigating that, then we're very, very happy to help you do that. The other one that we've developed this year is the step-by-step tool. This was essentially us trying to streamline our processes so groups can use an online tool to talk themselves through whether community shares, first of all, are the right option, and then second of all, where they're sitting against the 4 pillars. So then we know as a programme and they know as a group just how much they have to do and where they are in their journey, so then we can help them finalise the journey and get them the support that they need. So if anyone's interested, I can send direct links to those after the webinar. And all free of charge, as I said before. So yeah, I think that's us pretty much done. Sorry if we've gone over. We tend to get a wee bit excited about community shares still, which is good. So apologies if we've gone over time. That's our contact details up on the screen. And yeah, I'm not sure if we're doing the Q&A now or if we're doing it after the talk by US. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Kelly and Morgan. We're going to move on now to hearing from Gosling Estate Trust, where we're going to hear from Lisa McLean and Neil McKinnon.
Okay, we'll just get the slides up.
Just coming. The slides are just coming.
That's okay.
Yeah, it should be fun screen. Yeah, but it makes them full screen. Yes, showing like that. Just hit F5. On you go, Lisa.
Thank you. Okay, this is just a short summary presentation of what we went through as part of our share offer experience. We're just going to have a bit of a look at why we chose to go down this route, a bit of an overview of our share offer. I won't concentrate too much on the advantages, disadvantages, since Kelly has covered that. And we'll have a little look at some of the specifics to our project and a very quick look at share offers as a financing model, and then obviously we'll be part of the question and answer session at the end as well. The key objective for us was to finance 2 new turbines by a deadline relating to the feed-in tariff. So that's really what drove us to look at this. We needed a large bank loan but had options for raising the balance. Our own equity monies had been used up when we built the first turbine, so the basic options were another bank loan or, at that time, the relatively new concept of community shares. With the first turbine, we had multiple lenders in our finance package, and it was very frustrating to see how the lenders squabbled over the various loan securities, all of which just took up lots of time, legal fees, and lots of effort as well. So this really put us off taking out a second loan when we looked at phase 2 of the project, and again really took us down the route of the community shares. So like I said, I'm not going to concentrate on this too much. As you can see, there are various advantages to community shares over the more traditional loan funding. Sorry, so really I was just saying that we've got the advantages and the disadvantages, and I'm not going to talk about that really because Kelly has covered that really with the qualities and benefits in her presentation. So this is just a little share offer overview for us. Kelly's explained the various legal forms and governance structures. So we can just have a quick look at this, and I guess we can look and see if we met the key pillars of a successful share offer. The share offer, special society, a co-op set up to be accountable for share offer and to its members. Investors are members of the society with one vote each. Share offer runs for a limited period, and for us it was for capital for our project. Typically £50 shares, and often subject to a minimum of £250 and a maximum of £100,000 by law. For us, tax relief was available at 50% and 30% on investments, but unfortunately that's been abolished now for renewable energy projects. And that was something that really attracted a lot of investors at the time for us. And an annual interest payable of typically 4 to 6% for 20 years. So hopefully it does sound interesting to you. So just in practice, how does that work? Well, if we move on to looking at how we get a share offer moving, groups have options here as well. They can proceed with share offers on a homemade basis, and this is very much what we did. We took the front seat and managed all aspects of the process. It involved a lot of work, but it paid off because it meant we had quite a lot of local engagement as well. The other option is to appoint another organisation, such as another cooperative or consultancy, to manage the process and take a stake in running your project. It really just depends on your own objectives, plus the expertise and skills available to you and how well resourced you are as a group. Taking the DIY route as we did, when you launch a share offer, it all just takes time to build the momentum. Shares are a unique proposition, and they can even challenge someone who thinks that they understand investments. And there is no means of investors seeking professional advice, as share offers are unregulated. Groups need to know their area and how to communicate effectively. For example, social media was helpful for us, but not decisive. Print material turns out to be much more effective. People tend to be busy and are difficult to pin down, especially if they're not actively thinking about investments. Certain parts of the community will just not be interested, we found. Families with young children are more focused generally on reducing costs and have little disposable income for investments or time for looking into it either. Middle-aged and elderly were much more interested, but some are again very cautious with their savings. Grandparents can be drawn in, and we find that helpful to invest for their grandchildren. And there's a strong focus on quality, but groups also need to build volume, as there will be a high dropout rate for a whole variety of reasons. And sometimes groups might also be faced with some opposition, but you can overcome that. Just want to show you, like I said, we had most of our share offer we managed in-house, pretty much all of it. And these are just a couple of examples of some of the promotions that we undertook. We had to be very agile throughout our short campaign and reacted to feedback. We only had 5 months to raise the funds. Initially there was a call to invest across the community, and there seemed to be very limited amounts of the minimum sum invested early on, which we were advised was the backbone of share offers. We then moved on to targeting certain groups such as grandparents and so on. Later on, as the campaign developed, we heard that RBS had informed its investors of a reduced level of interest on savings accounts, so we took the opportunity to capitalise on that. And also we looked at the Christmas period and the season and tried to appeal to people looking for special gifts, and again these are a couple of adverts. It just shows that we had to keep moving quite quickly and take advantage of every opportunity that we were presented with to try and engage people with the share offer. This is a typical investment example. It is difficult, I guess, for some people to get their head round, and some people are surprised with the scale of returns that they are set to receive. This is an example of an investor who bought £1,000 of shares. As a taxpayer, they were able to claim back either the 50% or 30% of their investment from the taxman over the first 2 years, and this really depended on how quick they were off the mark with signing up for the share offer as to whether they got the 50 or the 30%. They then receive interest each year of a minimum of 4% and a maximum of 6% over 20 years. So the original investment is paid back in stages over the 20-year period as well, so this can be reinvested somewhere else. As you can see, the returns are significant, at least 1,100 for taxpayers claiming 30% tax relief and receiving 4% interest. So back to the reason that drove our share offer in the first place, the wind project. In the end, we raised £705,000, well over £705,000, which was well beyond our expectations, and it represented over a quarter of the total finance required. The average investment was very high, and the volume of minimum investments was very low. This probably reflected the confidence that was there, given that there was one turbine already in place. As the campaign moved on, it became more of an ethical financial product, which Morven mentioned, and it was more like rather than a grassroots community raising initiative. You can see the average investor age, which relates to the comments we've spoken about. There are communities of interest across the UK that are attracted by share offers, and it's sensible to allow access for them. We had 167 investors in total, many individuals, but we also had a few organisations. A bit under half were from the immediate area, a third came from the rest of the Outer Hebrides. Those outside the immediate area provided much higher investment amounts. This is just a run-through of our timescales. We undertook lots of research, attended events in the early stages to understand the process, and we spent a few months planning for the share offer. It went through a very difficult stage early on in the process because it meant we had to transfer the turbine ownership from the Outer, our parent company, to a completely new society that had been set up. This was a big shift and quite challenging for us as an organisation. We then moved to preparing the share offer document. This was a very intense period of around 6 weeks, but it was vital to the success of the share offer. That had to be watertight for the investors, as this is what they would be totally dependent on for making their decisions. So the offer was launched in October, and the sales and marketing kicked off straight away. The society has had one AGM to date, and a new board have met already. So in summary, it took around a year for the planning funds and the funds to be raised and processed. This is just a sample of our costs. So you can see it's quite low costs really, but as I say, we went with a DIY, down the DIY route, so that's probably really determines your costs at the outset. So to close, this is just really an overview of what the financial model for this kind of thing is. The return generated from share offers is going to the individual, it's not to banks or the government, so we're building up personal wealth. From stage one with a project leading funding, a group can launch a share offer and use the money. Once an income stream is established, the shareholders start to receive interest, and by stage 5, which would be perhaps 4 or 5 years on, investors would have some money to invest in another project, and so the cycle continues. There could be hundreds of potential share investors in an area, and in contrast to conventional funding, the cost can be saved and it allows more control to be taken locally. So I guess it's really looking at whether there's the expertise and funds locally in your area to work out if this is something that could work for you and your organisation. Okay, you can find out more about our share offer if you haven't already looked at it or don't know anything about it. There's some details here, and obviously myself and my colleague Neil are here for the Q&A session. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Lisa and Neil, for that really useful presentation. I'm going to move on to questions now. Our first question is from Angela Williams. The question is to Lisa. In the financial example shown, can you explain the incremental payback of £1,000, how that worked?
I'll get my colleague Neil to explain that. It was a payback of £1,100, isn't that right?
Okay, it's Neil here. Can help out on this one. So what we have here is somebody who invests an amount of money and then they receive interest on that over the whole period, 20-year period. And they also have relief received as well on a taxman of a relief. So basically it's minimum amount 300 in relief received, and you normally receive that in a lump sum single payment back in year 1 or year 2, and then you have your interest over and above that, which in this example was £800.
Another question for Lisa and Neil. You note a team of 4 to 6. Were those paid staff or volunteers or a mixture of both? That's from Angus Robertson.
It was really a mix of both, but predominantly on the day-to-day things, it was staff within our own office. Who really, this was on top of our sort of day-to-day jobs. And we also had volunteer board members as well. So at any given time, it was 4 to 6 people working on the various elements of the marketing, and the volunteers really we were using to tap into their own networks and so on to try and reach a wider audience.
Thank you, Lisa. Does anyone else have any more questions they'd like to ask of Kelly, Mervyn, Lisa or Neil?
Hi, Lisa. Could I ask a question, please? It's Claire Monroe from Highlands and Islands Enterprise here. It was a really interesting presentation. Thank you very much. I'm particularly interested in what you had said about the ownership of the turbine having to be transferred from Galson Trust over to the new organisation. And I was wondering why that had to be done. Could you explain why that had to be done, please?
I'll let Neil explain.
We were hoping nobody would erase this one. It's just really in our situation that we had a bank loan involved in the project, and maybe that's a bit more unusual. So we were really looking at a situation that nobody had any sort of ready answers on. And really the bank were wanting to have all their kind of usual securities and arrangements, and so we ended up then needing a subsidiary organisation. And what it meant really at the end of it all was that the assets had to sit in a new society, and we then had a subsidiary company which was then subsidiary underneath in the new society. So I mean, it was something that we kind of looked at and worked our way through with our lawyers and accountants, and it was something that we looked at over about 3 or 4 months and had various headaches in doing that. But I think the principle is that if you are involved in a project which has a bank loan, then you will need to have some sort of legal advice on how you set up all your organisations.
Thanks very much, Neil. I've got a question now from Elgar Finley. They're engaged with Plunkett. Can they work together on the development of their business plan and share offering? As in Community Share Scotland and Plunkett both providing support to one organisation simultaneously, is that possible?
Yes, it is possible. Oftentimes we will strive to ensure that all opportunities for support are maximised rather than duplicating efforts. So they're already in conjunction with, be it one of our consortium partners or another organisation who is offering support. What we would then do is get the okay to get in touch and collectively look at where things are at and then where things need to be and how we can link into that to ensure that ours gives back, our support gives the best bang for buck for both for the organisation. So it's very much a doable thing, and we do that quite a lot. Or if they weren't already working with an organisation such as Plunkett, and we knew that Plunkett could provide something that would then give support, they would allow even more support from us later, we would link them up accordingly. But the communication is there, so we would need to know that's happening.
Thanks, Kelly. We have another question for you from Angela Williams, who's wondering if tax breaks are still available in any sort of community shares projects.
I'm sorry, in what kind of projects?
Are tax breaks still available for any sort of projects where community shares would be used as finance?
Tax breaks are still very much available to most community shares projects. Now, there are exemptions. Primarily, you're looking at either social investment tax relief or enterprise investment scheme, both of which are at 30% return on the investor's investment. Now, often you will want to get sort of advance assurance on these from HMRC in order to ensure that you can either tell people in your offer document or in your advertising that you've done it and are hoping for a positive response, or that it's already been given advance assurance. Then you go on later on to compliance, which then allows the investor to follow through with that. However, there are some exemptions, and unfortunately, one of the areas where we thought that SITR was going to pick up the slack of reduced subsidies for renewable projects, it has been unequivocally stated by the government and HMRC that SITR will not give any tax relief to renewables projects, and enterprise investment scheme is not either, more generally speaking. And also, property development is a sticky spot, but that is something that we can look at and see what the project's actually trying to achieve versus, you know, it's property, oh no, we can't do it. So, whereas Port Patrick, they bought their community harbour, and that would be traditionally seen as property, or, you know, you could go, oh no, it's property development. Actually, because they're running it as a harbour, it is actually an enterprise, and therefore they were completely and utterly eligible for advance assurance for SITR. Does that answer the question?
Thanks, Kelly. I have another question from Elgar Finley for you. Can public sector organisations like Highlands and Islands Enterprise also invest in community shares?
Very much so. Any constituted organisation can invest in a community share offer. And any grouping of individuals can do it, but if you're constituted, what that means is you've got a bit more protection. Because if you were, say, a group of friends who rallied around to get enough money to invest in a share offer, and you all fell out, there's only one named person on the share offer document. Now, with the organisation, it would be the organisation's name if constituted, and what they do is they simply nominate someone to represent them at the AGMs or in any other capacity within that member ownership capacity. And so, yes, very much so. We very much encourage it. We're seeing schools, even bigger ones than that, all sorts of different organizations, and we think that there is really great scope for this to happen.
Thank you. I have another question for you now, Kelly, from Angela Williams. Is it normal to have a time limit on the project, such as 20 years? And does that mean that all shares are bought back at the end of the 20 years?
Well, no, actually. Oftentimes, it can be done, and it can be written into your offer document that that's how you plan to operate it. And you primarily see this occurring in situations such as renewable energy. But no, you don't have to do that. Ideally, you want your members to be engaged for the long haul, and if that's the case, then you are not hoping that they'll withdraw their money and become non-members, that you'll continue to grow your membership, and 50 years down the road still be run and organised by your membership.
Thank you, Kelly. We're going to wrap up now. So I'd like to say a thank you to our contributors, Mervyn and Kelly from Community Share Scotland and Lisa and Neil from Gosson Estate Trust. Thanks to all the people who submitted questions, and thank you to Highlands and Islands Enterprise for hosting this session. I hope you all found it useful. Thank you.